If you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or follow us on any of our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Live on Four Legs Podcast and on Twitter at Live on Four Legs Pod. You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen, Mama Queen. Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast, and we are a Pearl Jam podcast, as you all know, but we're taking a little break from that this week to become a Neil Young podcast, just for the week, but really it's kind of still Pearl Jam minus Eddie, so, you know, we're not really that much different, but it is going to mainly focus on Neil Young because we are doing the Neil Jam show from the Mirrorball tour, the very short 11-show Mirrorball tour that they did in that summer of 1995 in Europe. And yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to talk about and a lot of different details to get to. So let's get to them. Randy Sobel over here, John Ferrer over there. Good afternoon, good evening, sir.
Hello. Yeah, this is like kind of, we're going to like hang out with our uncle.
Yeah.
Uncle Neil's a little weird, but you know he tells some good stories.
He's got a cabin in the woods,
talking to him from it's good to talk to him once in a while. This is like, you know, you have to do the Zoom chat with the extended family when you're stuck home like this. So that's kind of what we're doing with this.
Right. Yeah, I love the idea because, you know, it's such a unique time in Pearl Jam's history that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot because it's considered Neil Young's history just as much as it is Pearl Jam's. And when you think of Pearl Jam's history and not having it involve Eddie Vedder, it sort of gets thrown under the rug a little bit.
Yeah, because I mean he was such a focal point and still is. He's as much as he tried to step away from it, he is the lead singer, so he's automatically going to be associated with it. So yeah, I think. I don't know how many people that this flew under the radar for, but yeah, I got to think there were some people like, wait, what? Who? Who are the other people in Pearl Jam?
Right.
Yeah,
I think those are all great points, but look, Neil is such a legend in his own right that, you know, for him to take the band under his wing and realize that maybe if they continue going with Eddie, he kind of saw the writing on the wall a little bit because this is around when Vitalogy they start recording Mirrorball around when Vitalogy is about to get released. I think he saw the writing on the wall, and I think he saw that there was some tension rising with the band, and that Ed could be a little bit of, he could be stubborn and he could be kind of a control freak. So it's good that he took the band under his wing and sort of got them a different perspective on how to do this. And even Ed was in the studio for a little bit of it, so he got to see how the band reacted to playing with him and performing and writing under him too.
Yeah, and Stone talked about it in the Pearl Jam 20 movie. He's like, maybe they were going through a little bit of crisis of confidence. Like, are we still the band that we were? Even for him, like, am I still the main guy? Can I still do, like, let me go in there and do the thing? He says, like they were maybe having a little bit of insecurity going on, because like it was Ed's band in 94, 95. He was starting to exert some influence. So. Yeah, and then he talks about for Neil to come in and say, hey, you guys are okay too, band. Come on with me. I'm gonna let's go do a thing. You guys you have worth beyond being just the backing band. Eddie and the Vetters. It could have easily become, but yeah, so important for them to. And then they talk about, like, even Ed talked about in that speech at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but he says, it was good to have an adult in our lives who actually, like, was a good role model, someone who'd actually been through it, had a whole history in the music business and lived to tell about it. I got to think that was a huge influence for them. So yeah, this is definitely a turning point in their history.
Absolutely, yeah, I completely agree, and I think for the most part, the unfamiliarity with Jack Irons, because Eddie knew Jack, I think this also tied them into Jack a little bit more, because they started recording this before they went out on tour in Australia and Japan and all those places. So yeah, I mean, like all those things, recipe for, getting the band back on track and figuring it all out. And they didn't need to do it with Ed, and it worked. It worked out well. So again, we're talking about Neil Jam today. I'm curious as to since we won't really get to ever do a Neil Young show again, I'm curious as to your just history with Neil and listening to Neil. Did most of it stem from Pearl Jam, or?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I've always been more of a casual Neil Young fan. Like, I remember seeing, going back and watching his performance of Rockin' in the Free World on Saturday Night Live from, I think it's 88 or 89. That's just a great, like, unbridled performance. It's pure rock and roll joy. If you haven't seen that, go back and watch it. But I had seen that in the early 90s. I remember seeing the 93 performance of Animal when he came on and played. They did Animal and Rockin' the Free World, just amazing. But yeah, Mirrorball was really the first time that I really was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I'm going to buy a Neil Young album now. Like, I'm 17 years old, like, okay. And like I knew, like, some of the hits, like, Ohio, Old Man, Needle and Damage Done, some of the more famous stuff, but I'd never really done, like, the deep dive into it, and I still haven't. Like, I'm people talk about, After the Gold Rush and Harvest and all these classic, On the Beach and stuff like that, but it's just never been something I've really dug into. But I appreciate it whenever it comes on. I like it. I like listening to the show because he kind of goes into the back catalog a little bit and pulls out some really cool stuff. So yeah, it was good to listen to, and I mean, I absolutely loved Mirrorball. Like, I listened to it all the time back then. So yeah, really enjoyed it. And I'd never really, and then again, never really done the deep dive into this tour. There was so much going on in '95. We forget about, because now there's almost nothing going on. We might get a tour here and there, but 95, like Pearl Jam tours, Far East, Australia, Mike Watt tour, then they get back together, they do Soldier Field, then there's this Neil Jam tour, there's Mad Season, there's another tour in the fall. Like, there was so much going on that year.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the points that I'm going to bring up later that we can kind of elaborate on is, what if there was no Ticketmaster boycott and they'd be able to perform with Neil all over the U.S. Like, that could have been massive had that have happened, but it was really just kind of stood in time as being just 11 shows, and that's it. Like, that's all you get. And it being European shows too, I think that makes it more, flying under the radar, because obviously, if they played in New York or Boston, it probably would have been the most unforgettable experience on the planet. But, it's just kind of gets hidden away, being played in Europe. But you did mention before, Neil has such a massive discog, that it is very hard to go back and pay attention to all the stuff that he's done and really study it. Obviously you nailed the best albums, Harvest and After the Gold Rush. Everybody knows This Is Nowhere. And then Rust Never Sleeps is fantastic as well. But there's so many albums that he put out in the 70s that, like, Zuma and Comes a Time, where, like, there's good stuff on it, but they don't get that kind of same discussion as those other albums. And it just, because it's Neil, maybe there are one or two songs off each of those albums that really have staying power over the last, 40 years or so. But you kind of, unless you're a massive Neil fan, you kind of just forget about some of them. And I think that the only thing that's due to is just the enormity of his catalog, basically.
Well, I think there's probably some they'd like to forget too. You got to think that everybody's rocking in the trance years from the early 80s.
Of
there
course.
There's some
maybe
trash,
yes,
in there. Yeah,
but he did that on purpose, so it's
sure.
It's not. And you know what? Honestly, I've listened to Everybody's Rockin' before, and it feels like one big spoof record. It's fun. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, it's garbage, but you can tell throughout the whole thing, Neil knows that it's terrible. And it came at a time where, like, everybody in the 80s was going through, like, 50s with withdrawals. So, I mean, it kind of fit the landscape perfectly, like 50s diners and crap like that. So it made sense, at least. Okay, so we did something kind of interesting for this show. We got together a bunch of patrons. This was one of our free bootlegs of the month. Every 4th of every month, we send out a free bootleg of a show that we're going to be covering in the future. And every now and again, we're going to do some forums. We're going to get some of the patrons together and just talk what they thought about the bootleg and the era. So for a little bit in here, we're gonna kind of splice in some of those bites and some of the conversation that we had with the patrons. So you'll see that once we get into it. We'll tee it up as we go along. But since we're on the subject of Patreon, let's say thank you to a couple of new patrons from this week.
We had a couple of people that joined up this week. Big thanks to Casey Gioeli and Mark Liss, who both joined up Patreon this week. Maybe hopefully they got a chance to listen to the setlist draft episode that we put out there. So if that's something that those guys are interested in, then definitely let us know, because we're going to plan on doing a lot more of those. And it's you can go to patreon.com/liveon4legs. That's the number 4. And for only $1 a month, you get access to all the bonus episodes we do, the setlist drafts, the evolution episodes, the Bridge School series we've been doing, and also like the Devo episodes where we kind of pick a fun topic and talk about it. We do rankings or top whatever, So there's a lot of content on there. So hope you guys are enjoying that.
Yep, and I think we're gonna have a Bridge School episode out pretty soon, if not this week, right?
Yeah, going into the 2000s finally.
Yeah, 2001, that's like a very interesting era of the band, because it's right smack and dab in the middle of Binaural and Riot Act, and the band was kind of sort of in flux a little bit, so we'll get to talk a lot about that, which should be very interesting. But yeah, like John said, head on over to Patreon if you want to contribute to the show, and we're probably soon gonna need some major contributions, because we've been using Zoom a lot, and I think it's time for us to get regular Zoom, because free Zoom is not the answer. So yeah, those contributions would go into things like that, so we can kind of give back to you guys and do events on Zoom, like the event that we're doing tomorrow. Last Fan Standing is back, everybody. So if you remember from about 2 months ago, we did this, a little trivia competition on Zoom. It'll be out there tomorrow. We're going to post links. We'll DM them on our Facebook page. If just get in touch with us if you want to be part of the trivia. It'll likely be at 9 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. We'll send you the links. Basically what it is, and you can find the video on our YouTube channel, is we go through and we give you one trivia question, and everybody has to guess an answer to it. Am I describing that right, John? I feel like there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like elimination trivia. So we'll go around, we'll ask a question that has, multiple answers, and everyone will get a chance to answer, in order. If you miss one, you might get a strike. We're not so mean. We're going to kick you out after one wrong answer. But, after two or three, depending on which round, we'll whittle it down till we get to just a few people, and then we'll switch up the questions and make it a little harder until we have the last fan standing.
Yep, and the last fan standing is going to have to beat Kieran this one, because you'd have to think that he'd be the favorite, winning the last one, getting to pick an episode. We'll do something for the winner of this one, whether it's an episode or something else. We'll get something in there. We haven't decided yet, so that should be a lot of fun. Keep your eyes out on social media. We're going to be posting stuff on that very soon. That'll all be happening tomorrow, the 27th at 9 p.m. Eastern time on Zoom. All right, John, let's kind of give it to our forum a little bit that we had. Let's kind of, we talked a little bit about just the early stages of what was going on in 1995 and how, the 95 Polo Field show where Ed got sick was really the spark of all this, and was really the first time that Neil got himself involved with playing with Pearl Jam. So why don't we hear some of what we talked about in the forum about that?
Yeah, this is Gabe. Hi, Central Pennsylvania. Hey guys. Didn't they end up playing like Rockin' Free World twice?
Yeah,
So, they had to do a couple repeats.
A makeshift reprise of it or something like that.
Yeah. I tell you, it never surprised me that people were kind of crappy about it, right? I mean, weren't we in the middle of the Ticketmaster stuff? So the shows were, a little maybe few and far between, or a little harder to get. I don't know. I was never surprised that people were crappy about it when Ed went off the stage, but what a show it would have been to see. I mean, it definitely would have been pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and I think the reaction, of course, was mixed. You don't have back in 95, I think Neil was kind of, a relic of the past a little bit. And, people wanted Eddie. He's right. The guy. If it was Jeff or if it was Stone that left because they got sick, then okay, sure, Neil can fill in, but at least you still have Eddie. He was the selling point for the band. You bring in Neil, this Canadian cowboy on stage, and they're playing songs that people have never heard before, because Mirrorball is a month away from being released at this point. So that's also kind of goes into people being a little, I guess, detracted from it.
Yeah, I mean, there was that, and we hadn't thinned the herd at this point. Let's be honest. I mean, this was some still hangers on points of early Pearl Jam fame. At least I'm just throwing from my perspective. I mean, I think because they had been playing with Neil at this point for a few years on and off. Whether it was like the 93 tour when they were open for him in Europe, and obviously what happened with MTV with the music awards in 93, but this was still height of Pearl Jam mania. So trying to replace Ed with Neil Young, going out on stage and making, raucous cacophonic noise was not gonna delight the masses of Golden Gate Park, unfortunately. I would have been doing backflips had I been out there, but that was not meant to be.
Well, yeah, Randy from Toronto here.
Hey,
it's totally true. The first show that I ever saw Pearl Jam at was here in Toronto, and Neil Young with Booker T and the MGs was the closing band. It was Blues Traveler, Soundgarden.
Wasn't that anniversary like yesterday or something?
Exactly, August 18th, 93. So So we had certainly seen him come on stage with them. Eddie came out at the end of Neil's show, and obviously they brought everybody out who did Rockin' the Free World at that show. But the idea, that it's in San Francisco and not in a place like Toronto where we all know Neil so well.
Right.
There's a great video of that show on YouTube as well that you can watch. And, like, the Cortez the Killer from that show is just incredible. Like, you really do justice to it all. And yeah, it's kind of incredible to think there's people there booing. It's bizarre.
Let's get to Mirrorball. 25 years later, this is 25 years that the record's been out. Neil Young has probably 50 albums, and he has released one a year since 1967 or something like that. He releases an album just about every year.
Before that.
Yeah, right. And you're not counting, CSNY stuff in Buffalo Springfield and all that. So reactions to the album, because I remember this was my dad's introduction to Pearl Jam here in 95. And, through Neil Young, an artist that he liked, I kind of got to be on the bandwagon with him after that with Pearl Jam. But he loved the album, and I remember getting really good reviews at the time. And it's just, even from a Neil perspective, it's one of his better ones.
I think it's very consistent as a Neil Young fan as well as a Pearl Jam fan. I'm David Ritter from Lexington, Kentucky, by the way. I remember when I got it and I listened to it for the first time, and I was just like, man, these two great acts have come together, and not really knowing about the past where they had been touring together. Both of them, like Mike and Neil, playing off each other on that album are just incredible.
I didn't come to it until much later. So I don't remember. I'm sure I listened to it in 1995, but I don't think I appreciated it until much later. It's pretty damn good. Where it falls in the Neil Young catalog, it's impossible to say. I'm so biased because of the Pearl Jam connection. I'm biased because, and this probably won't be the last time I bring this up, but I'm a Jack Irons guy. So for me, I've only got Yield and No Code, right, in the Pearl Jam catalog with Jack behind the kit. So I consider this another one, of his, and I just think he's so good on that album that for me it just boosts the whole thing up. So where does it fall in the Neil catalog? High up for me personally. I'm sure some Neil super fans probably have it not quite as high. I'd be interested to hear, but pretty high for me.
Well, considering this won a vote on Neil's fan club vault group that they wanted this pro shot recording of this released, I would think that either a lot of Pearl Jam's fans just bomb through and bomb the votes, or they actually really like this era and this album.
I think it's a little bit of the latter. And also, I'm a moron. I forgot to say who I was earlier. I'm Pat Bogle from Albany, New York. And
Pat.
Yeah, nobody knows who you are, right?
That time period for Neil was, like, to me, it's pretty incredible. Like, the output that he had in that early 90s period, like coming right out of like Freedom, Harvest Moon, Sleeps with Angels, which is like, just absolutely killer as a record and completely understated because he didn't really tour that one. And then his flip into what he was doing with Crazy Horse in 96, 97, and doing this right in between was pretty wild. I remember as a fan of Pearl Jam, the anticipation, I was into Neil Young, but the anticipation of them working together was peak at that time. Cause again, it was Neil and Crazy Horse just came off of, releasing Sleeps with Angels. Vitology had just come out, and then all of a sudden, like, Usenet groups were exploding at the time. Back in the day when there was no such thing as imagining a Zoom call, Usenet groups were people typing things into chat rooms about the rumors that were going around, and then recording, and then him popping up at a couple of the Seattle shows earlier that year. Obviously, the shows that they did in January of that year at Constitution Hall, and then of course, Neil being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that January. It was just like there was a ton of hype and anticipation for it. And I think the interesting thing that came out of it when it started to come together and it was released was the known entity that Ed was kind of like not on the record. You know, he was backup vocals on a couple of tracks. That was it. And I think that to some Pearl Jam fans, I think that bummed them out a little bit. They expected a little bit more there, but I don't know. I found it to be, especially looking at it in the rearview mirror of what you know and all of the different things that were happening at that time. It was pretty insightful for them to just be like, yeah, you're going to go, you know, I'm going to sit it out. You guys go record this and go tour it together and really give them some breathing room to kind of experiment and do some interesting stuff. The impact also it all had on the 1995 touring, and particularly you see it on the, at least I feel like you see it on the shows that they played post the August European tour that they did with Neil. It has like a just a different vibe than probably any period of Pearl Jam has. Like it's very uniquely grounded in a Neil Young Crazy Horse influence.
Once again, thanks to everybody, and you know, not every single person's voice that was at the forum and part of the forum is there, but there were about like 8 to 10 people there, and when we mentioned that we need to not use free Zoom anymore, there were 2 different sessions. So for those that kind of got booted and couldn't get back in, we're sorry about that, but we are going to try to get our own for next time. And we promise that won't happen in Last Fan Standing. We have that set up. But yeah, so there, you know, we might not go back to the forum for the rest of the show. We might have like one more time because we tried recording some other things in the second session. It didn't work out, so you'll just have to listen to John and I and just deal with it like you do every week. So all right, let's get into the show. They come out roaring, and just like they did at the Polo Fields, they open up with Big Green Country. And kind of, I don't remember if I mentioned this in the section that we talked about, but there's a reason why they open up with Big Green Country, and it goes back to what happened that night when Eddie got sick. And just the line, a pack of wolves want their money back. They saw everybody that was restless, and I think that was Neil's tongue-in-cheek way of saying, like, all right, well, here's what you get instead of what you want.
Yeah, and they opened with this at every single Neil Jam show, I think, too. It was they didn't really vary up the set list very much. You know, I'm sure they had a limited time to rehearse and get everything ready, so they probably just worked through a set list. But yeah, I think Big Green Country's a great opener. You know, I love the way the song opens up right at the beginning, and the solo gets a big reaction. You know, when Neil takes that first guitar solo, the crowd's into it. And yeah, it's a great way to start. You know, that line's great. Like, you know, who would have thought, you know, when they first wrote the song that it would be so appropriate. But yeah, it's a great way to start. Love it.
Yeah, a lot of what we talked about on the forum about the show is just how great that Jack sounds on it. Again, like, I don't know if Dave A's style would even be able to fit with Neil, so that's another thing that really kind of came together really nicely with Jack's appearance here. And just really early on, there's just a ton of energy. There's a video out there. I'm sure we'll post it to social media if we haven't already, but there's a full show video, and you see, like, Jeff is just wild. He's out of control. Like, he's feeling the energy, and even this was, I think, the 10th of 11 shows that they did. Right. They still have to be feeling like it's kind of a dream here, you know, every time they take the stage with him.
Yeah, and I'm sure the first couple of shows were a little bit tentative, and they were still working some things out. But by this time, yeah, they're just let loose, have fun, And again, there's no pressure on those guys, for Jeff and Stone and even Mike, like who normally has the spotlight most of the show. Like he can just kind of like step back and be one of the guys, and they can just work on playing with Jack and get into a nice rhythm and just do their thing. And yeah, Jeff looks like he's having so much fun. He's jumping around and bouncing around like he did back in the day.
Absolutely, yeah. And let's just forget, who do we have on keyboards for this show?
That would be Brendan O'Brien.
Yeah.
They don't. He gets a little cameo in the video, but yeah, he's really prominent in the songs here. He's playing along, and it was great. I'm sure after he came out and did the Soldier Field show, came out and played on a couple of songs, so that was maybe a little taste of it. And then he was on the recording. He played on the Merkenball record, and so yeah, I'm sure it was just a thing like, hey, what are you doing for the next month? Come along, we're gonna take a trip. We need somebody. Let's go.
Right. Are you not producing any of the greatest albums in the 90s this month? Because that was pretty much his whole entire decade. Some of the best albums from the 90s are all in his hands. And I would have to think that around that time he was probably doing Purple. Was that out yet in 95? That was probably out. Yeah,
no
Purple
idea.
was probably out. But Evil Empire, I think that was something he worked on. That came out in 96. So that had to have been around that time. So yeah, like really cool that you got a studio engineer in the mix, and and obviously Brendan O'Brien's kind of been like a sixth man or seventh man, so to speak, for the band, and he's kind of synonymous when you think of their legacy and their history. So it's very cool to see him in this spot. Yeah, all this stuff early is all Mirrorball stuff. There's probably, I think, 15 songs in total from this show and 6 Mirrorball songs. So this is just kind of getting all the Mirrorball songs right out in front. After Big Green Country, Song X, Act of Love, Downtown. Probably this combination, outside of Throw Your Hatred Down, probably the best 3 songs on that album. What do you think?
Ooh, I don't know if I can go that far. You gotta have On the Ocean in there for me.
Yeah, there's so many good songs on the album. But like, as far as memorable ones, as far as ones that kind of stick with you, like these 3 are very, very high on the list, I would think. Especially
and Pearl Jam had done Act of Love, at that Constitution Hall show early '95. So people were maybe a little bit familiar with that one, and Song X has popped up from time to time. So these are the ones that have a little more history with the band as well. So yeah, it was nice to see them in there. But the thing I noticed too is that Neil's taking all these guitar solos.
He is.
You've got this caged animal in McCready over there on the side of the stage. Like, let him loose, let him do his thing, man. This could have easily. You go back to things like Reach Down and like some of the early things like Black and Alive, this would have been perfect for him to just extend some of these songs and just really let loose. I kept waiting for it and it just never came.
Well, doesn't he gets a solo in Downtown, I think, right?
He does. He finally gets one in Downtown. You can definitely tell the difference because Neil is more of like a percussive guitar player. He's more of like he has that kind of like really hard strumming that Eddie does too. He probably got that a little bit from him, but yeah, you definitely tell the difference. And oh yeah, I wish the camera would have panned over because I would have loved to see him do that solo. But yeah, he gets a couple of moments, but they never really let him out of the cage on this one.
You're right. This is Neil's thing, and I think Neil is very, in a way, he's kind of the same as Eddie, where he has to be in control of things, and we can talk about Crazy Horse a little bit and how he's just like they're his house band and he's really kind of running the show when it comes to that. But it's a Neil show, and while I want Mike, I have to give it to Neil in this because he's a legend, and you can let Mike go a little bit and let him go off. Yeah, that's great, but also it is kind of cool to see Neil soloing for, like with Jack backing him and with Stone backing him and with, with everything going on there. Like, I think that's just as cool as if Mike was soloing for Neil,
Oh yeah, and I'm sure it's not an ego thing, and I'm not trying to put that on him. I'm sure he was happy to just play his parts and do his thing, and if he gets a solo, great, he'll do the thing, and then he'll go back to playing his part. But yeah, they look like they're having a great time, especially during downtown, when Mike's doing his solo, Neil goes out to rock out with Jeff a little bit, and he takes a moment to kind of like to appreciate them a little bit, so that was nice. But yeah, another thing too, he never really gets on the microphone, at least in the video that I saw in the recording. He never really goes on and says, hey, thanks to these guys in Pearl Jam for being here,
just one time he just asked how you doing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, but like, and I'm sure he didn't need to. Everybody knew who they were. I think we had someone write in on social media, said they were at the show,
and
fun.
Yeah.
They were expecting Eddie to be there. Like, why would you? I'm sure most of the people that went to this show who weren't like the hardcore Neil fans were like, oh, we're gonna go see this, and Ed's gonna come out and sing. They're gonna do some Pearl Jam songs. Just watch.
But also, you don't get from the crowd. You don't get Eddie chants, which is amazing.
Yeah.
It's all chants for Neil and like loud chants too. This is a Dublin. This is like a Irish football club type crowd. Like, they are very, very heavy into Neil, and you just didn't need Eddie for this. It wasn't his platform. I like that he wasn't a part of it. So
I agree. Yeah, I'm not saying he should have been there. I agree that it's not his moment.
Right, and I think when I was at MSG for the Temple of the Dog show, I remember, and it's just bullshit. Like, nobody knows what they're talking about, but somebody in the bathroom or on a food line or something like that was like, Eddie's here tonight. Oh yeah, where'd you hear that one from? People are talking. Oh yeah, who's talking? People. Like, it doesn't come from anywhere. Like, I don't. Ed's not the kind of person that shows up to steal a spotlight like that, just for one song or something. So
no, I mean that's the thing with his personality. He's not. He doesn't want to be the guy to step into the spotlight in the in the gold lame suit and be like, look at me, this is my thing. Here I am. Right. That's just not his personality.
Right, and also he's got a lot of shit to deal with. He's writing half the songs off no code at this time anyway. So if you're a no code fan, I think you would take no code for 11 measly Mirror Ball shows, which are not measly, by the way. But anyway, so yeah, a fantastic little section there of Song X, Act of Love, Downtown. Not ones that Pearl Jam ever goes back to. Act of Love a little bit in their history. They went back to it once in '98, and then I think they played Act of Love when they did Neil Came Out in Toledo. I think that was one of the songs they did.
Yeah,
I
think so.
This is not one that they've gone back to, and we'll get back to talking about that in a little bit. So Mr. Soul comes after this, and this is kind of the rarely played Buffalo Springfield track that Neil busts out, which kind of, it seems like a surprise, and it's not one, I know Buffalo Springfield, I listen to Buffalo Springfield, I have I have that on vinyl, but I didn't really know this. It just didn't stick with me, I guess, as you'd say. So what's interesting about it is I'm going to throw this to the forum to talk about it a little bit, because it ties in some things with the band, and Bagel actually said something really important, which I'm going to piggyback off of. So let's listen to him, and then we'll come right back.
They were playing this in '93 with Booker T and the MGs. I can't say for sure how often it was played before that, but it stayed with Crazy Horse after, because it's something that they played a bunch in those 96, 95, 96, 97 tours that they did. It was in the mix. It's on that Year of the Horse record.
Yeah.
I think the version of that is one that they played at the Bridge show in one of those years, 95 or 96, which sounds just like intense and crazy. Crazy Horse playing acoustic and just like completely shredding it. But it's the thing that was awesome about this Yeah, I don't know. I either I'm just like overhyping it, but if you like hone in on Jack's drums on this, it sounds exactly like he's playing Last Exit behind Mr. Soul.
Whoa.
You
Whoa.
mentioned something about it, and I think you hit something there. So Bagel said that this kind of had like a Last Exit feel to it. And I listened to it another 2 times after we had that conversation. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, Last Exit, that drum beat in the beginning sounds like Last Exit. I listened to the actual song, the actual recording of the song, and I wanted to see the differences. It's got like a complete Not For You vibe. I was getting Not For You all over that.
Huh, okay.
Like
cool.
that whole like bridge, that na 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 na, like all felt like Not For You to me.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's about the right time period too, like 94, 95. That's interesting.
Right. I'm just wondering if Neil thought that maybe, okay, like this is right in their wheelhouse. He listened to Vitalogy and he was thinking, all right, well, what's the most Vitalogy sounding song in his catalog? Could this be it? That could be something that could have been on his mind. But digging more into it, Mr. Soul is something that he goes back to every now and again. So makes sense.
Okay, yeah. I mean, and two, and this is not one that I was familiar with, but I went back and read about it. And if you look at the lyrics, like the song is about, kind of going through problems with sudden fame and kind of being uncomfortable with stardom and like being kind of not cool with being thrust in the spotlight real quick. So I got to think that had something to do with it too. Like maybe he picked it out for the meaning, or maybe one of the band members picked it out. Like, hey, what about this one? That's kind of, that was a cool song. And this goes way back to, I think it was released in '66 or '67.
Yeah, Buffalo
so
Springfield
goes way back. So, but yeah, I think probably the subject matter had something to do with it too. Very, very relevant to what they were going through at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, like it just has this Last Exit meets Not For You vibe. And even the way, if you listen to the recording and you listen to how they play it live, it's got that Vitalogy groove. The 60s kind of had, most rock songs in the 60s had a very like, what do they call it? 4/4 beat.
Yeah.
Like boom, 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 boom. But this was able to breathe. This had space to it. Like it felt like a Vitalogy song,
Yeah, and that's Jack too. And like Patrick talked about, the drums on this, like Jack does a really good job, making this song his own. And yeah, I thought it was one of the highlights. I don't know. We may end up doing a top 3 moments in it. I don't know yet, but this is definitely one of them.
So in between songs, crowd is just nuts. They're absolutely ape shit. They better settle in because they're in for it right here, because here comes Scenery, and it's a 19-minute version of Scenery. Now, okay, this is where Neil is kind of tapping in to the rest of the band and saying, okay, we're doing this. This is what we usually do with Crazy Horse. Can you guys handle this? Pearl Jam is not Fish. They're not a jam band. They're not a band that goes off and does this kind of thing. The closest thing that they get is, sometimes they'll jam on Rearview Mirror, which honestly at the time they weren't doing. Sometimes they'll jam on Immortality, which honestly at the time they really weren't doing that much either. this is completely out of their wheelhouse, but Neil kind of brings in this comfort and makes it work for them. He kind of brings everybody into it, and it feels like a complete, collaboration on it.
Yeah, and when I first saw this, and we kind of teased this when we talked about the show that there's like a really extended version of Scenery, and they were doing this in almost every show, really extending. And when you first look at when you put it into your music player and you look at the times, you're like, oh man, like 19 minutes is going to be great to listen to. Like they're just going to go off, and like it's going to be fantastic. But I gotta say, like this one didn't really live up to the hype, I think, for me. Like I thought, and that's interesting you mentioned those other songs where they kind of get to that 8 or 9 minute, like a Porch or a Rearview Mirror, or even like some of the Blacks at that point were getting extended. I think they kind of get to minute 8, and I think they try to do a build up, and it's a little disjointed, like it doesn't perfectly come off, but like Neil has to kind of come on and get him back on it to kind of pick him up for the second half of it. And like I kept waiting for McCready to just let loose and just tear just blow these people away with like a face melting, like I said, like a reach down type of solo, but it just never came.
Yeah, while it was collaborative, I think it was also very structured. And I think that's kind of Neil's way, that, the best way that I can put it is going to be completely off anybody's radar. The thing that I'm going to describe right now is going to be just mean nothing to just about everybody that's listening. So I'm going to say it anyway, because at least one or two people will get it. So Macho Man Randy Savage was known as a wrestler for planning out his matches move by move. That's not really how you plan wrestling matches. You go by feel. You kind of, you feel the crowd and you kind of anticipate what's going to come. And he was the kind of person that needed to plan out every single move, every single minute of the match in order to get the whole match constructed. I think that's also Neil Young when it comes to jams.
Could be. Yeah, I mean, that could have been something where they rehearsed it and he was like, hey guys, just follow me, just stick with me. I'll take the lead, and
right.
We'll just follow me, and wherever I go, just follow,
And a lot of that is like this kind of in the middle, 11th, 12th minute, Neil is holding out, one of these echo notes, and you kind of get Brendan O'Brien's doing something in the background, but the band isn't as involved in that part. But, I guess now that you mention it, like, maybe you save it for later a little bit, and Cortez the Killer is kind of the one where they really gelled a little bit more. Maybe it's that. Yeah. So, all right. Well, look, Scenery and Peace and Love are two completely underrated songs off the album. Unfortunately, they didn't get to play Peace and Love at this show, but they did release on this bootleg that's been out forever. They released like 4 songs from a Stockholm show, and Peace and Love is one of them. So we can talk about that later if we wanted to, but let's finish up this set list and see where this takes us. So, okay, 19 minutes of this. It's time to take a break for the band. They're not used to jamming at all. They're not used to Neil-style construction, playing like this. So Neil's going to be solo for a little while, and he grabs the acoustic to do this 4-song section that really brings the house down. Comes a Time, Needle and the Damage Done, Don't Let It Bring You Down, and Mother Earth. So some of these are Neil's best songs. I think that Don't Let It Bring You Down is probably top 5 my favorite Neil Young songs, easily. Love that song. Needle and the Damage Done, I mean, it's such a classic, and we kind of mentioned in the forum, this is probably what got cut out of a recording that we did, but we mentioned that, the crowd is singing along to it, and they're really intensely singing, and it's kind of becoming a sing-along, but the subject matter is so depressing that, would Neil really want them to kind of participate in that matter?
Damage Done especially, that, I mean, again, talk about a relevant song for what we were going through in 1995, definitely.
Yeah,
but yeah, the crowd especially just stood out to me, because this was unexpected for me too, listening to this, like, oh, the band's gonna take a break and do a little acoustic, middle set here. It's cool. And again, I'm not familiar with "Don't Let It Bring You Down." Again, it wasn't really a huge hit. So, yeah, I mean, just the thing that stood out to me was how intense the crowd is. Just like you said, they turn it into a sing along. Like, this is absolutely crowd service.
Yeah, and I kind of equate it a little bit in a way to how Alive after a while became such a positive influence on the band, and it's nothing like that, but at least it makes the crowd feel something in the same way, and maybe it doesn't change the meaning of the song, break a curse, so to speak, like Alive does, but it definitely, everybody in that crowd has an attachment to it.
Oh yeah, and Mother Earth too, when he goes over to sit at the pump organ, that brought back a little memories of some Pearl Jam related moments too, like going back to that Long Road performance from 2001 where Neil was playing organ, and then you got to think River Cross too, like, they show a little bit of, the people come out and like lift the pump organ, take it off the stage immediately after. That definitely hit me as like, oh yeah, we could be hearing something like that in this next tour.
And Ed has been using the pump organ for a long time at his shows.
Yeah.
I think he plays "Isn't It a Pity" by George Harrison,
and "I'm So Tired" by Fugazi.
Yep.
There's a couple of them.
Yeah. So I think this is absolutely one of the big influences on that for sure. And I didn't even know, really. I knew that he did, the version of Long Road, but I didn't know that, like, he played on Mother Earth. I didn't know that was him. I just thought that was a studio. Recording. So, really cool moment. You get something a little bit different. Neil shows off all of his talents, and I think when looking at all the set lists, they always had this section in there. He'd change it up a little bit. They'd throw in a My Hey Hey or After the Gold Rush, but for the most part, this was I think he did Mother Earth every night. I think he did Needle and Damage Done every night. So this was pretty standard for what was going on in that set. All right, here we get to our last Mirrorball song of the night, and I think this is easily, maybe not easily, but it's one of the most impactful songs off of Mirrorball, and maybe we can say easily impactful on just the career of Neil and the staying power that the song had when, later on in Neil's career, because none of these songs really lasted much longer than this tour. Throw Your Hatred Down got to get in some shows after this tour a little bit, and I think he played it earlier this year on one of his fireside sessions, I believe.
Yeah, that's one thing I think one of our patrons in the forum had mentioned too, that he had seen them play it in '97, I think. So that's awesome that it stuck around. And then in 2016, Pearl Jam brought it back. So yeah, it's one that it's kind of had a little bit more staying power than most. And it's fantastic. It was so great to see the band come back out, and it gets a big reaction as well. It's just awesome. And then Neil just goes off at the end of it. He's flailing around doing his thing. It's a great version of Throw Your Hatred Down.
Yeah, and I think you totally needed that. Like, I like the song Mother Earth, but I think this was kind of while it was a nice to see Neil at the pipe organ at the pump organ. It was kind of a downer a little bit, and you needed something to just juice you back up, and this was perfect. I think this may end up being in my top 3 of this night, because this was such a perfect moment for that time, and I felt a lot of energy coming from the band on this. And the rest of the show is just nothing but energy. So Cortez the Killer, this is what, a 15-minute version of this? And again,
yeah.
You know, you're playing 15 songs. It's a 2-hour show, so some songs have got to stick around for a little bit. And I would think that this is probably one of Neil's most epic songs in his catalog. He goes like, he has 3 different styles of songs. He has the complete rocker. He has like the out there Western jam, and then he has like the acoustic ballad. And obviously this fits there, that jam in that jam category where it's just gets to epic proportions, and it has such a great build to it, and then it rests easy a little bit at the chorus, and they keep building. I love this song. Maybe besides Cowgirl in the Sand, this is probably one of Neil's most epic of his epic songs.
Yeah, I think the first time I heard this song, I was probably in college doing college radio, and I think the band Built to Spill had put out a live album. This is maybe 20 years ago, and they had ended with a version of Cortez the Killer, and it was like 22 minutes. And I just remember that being like the song that you could put on and then like take a little break. So I would always, this would get a lot of play, and I remember thinking like, man, for a long song, like this is kind of great. Like it doesn't really drop in energy. Like you said, it keeps building and building. And yeah, to hear, you know, Pearl Jam backing Neil Young and Cortez the Killer is epic enough. But yeah, they do a really good job. It didn't feel like 15 minutes.
No, not at all. Yeah, this song just kind of, to me, it's kind of like watching a mini movie, or like you get kind of images of what could be going on in your head. It's sort of westerny. Like I get that western vibe that, you know, like cowboys and Indians kind of thing. I get that vibe from it, and it's just such a masterwork in storytelling that, you know, Pearl Jam, I think at that point wasn't there yet, and maybe hasn't ever reached Neil at that high of a platform where, you know, their songs can kind of be like a mini movie. I think somebody mentioned in our forum that every Neil album feels like one gigantic song. Well, I mean, it's been a while since I've listened to Zuma, which I believe this is on, but yeah, that's got to feel like, you know, watching the Star Wars trilogy or something.
Oh yeah, I mean, and think of a song like Cortez. You think about, like, you know, it's like the Incas, and it, you know, you talked about the Western feel of it. It's, you know, South American, based on that. I think Hernan Cortez. You know, I'm not going to give a history lesson here, but yeah, the lyrics really tell a story, and it's really evocative, and yeah, the music really fits with it. It's a great piece of songwriting for it. You know, I don't know if the studio version is just as long as they do it live, but yeah, it definitely, you know, you definitely feel like it needs the length to tell the story.
This takes up a good chunk of side 2, I believe, off that album. I want to say that most of Neil's stuff, like most of his albums, are 9 to 10 songs, and he'll have one side 2 track that's like 9 minutes long, and then that's like the epic of his album.
Right. That's,
you know, and sometimes it's less formulaic than that, but I feel like at least for that album, that's where that's at. But look, it's just, they're making magic here, and again, the builds, and Neil absolutely tearing a hole in his guitar, Mike getting a few solos, Jeff and Neil having moments together. Like, I feel like this is the moment that the band remembers from this experience the most, is probably this song, and that's probably why they go back to it in Toledo as well.
Could be, yeah.
another epic, classic Neil Young song, Powderfinger, just has this triumphant accomplishment to it. Like, Neil does this so well, where again, he makes songs sound like they're part of the movie soundtrack, and that's, I get that little lick he does in Powderfinger. Like, I get that sort of feeling of rejuvenation, like positivity, like triumphantry. Like, it has this victory winning vibe, you know? Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but he definitely elicits some absolutely incredible storytelling with the music here.
Yeah, and there was some nice, we talked about the build-up of Cortez Killer, same thing for this one. Like, Jeff and Jack, it was just really fun to watch them play off each other and play, especially these last few songs here. They were really, and probably a function of having 10 shows behind them at this point. But yeah, they were, and the rehearsals, and they were really feeling, and they were really, like we talked about at the beginning, just letting loose and having fun. Like, all the spotlights on Neil, we can just do our thing. But yeah, Powderfinger, this little section here, I mean, it's just hit after hit, and he really can take these songs live, and that's something that Pearl Jam has learned to do too, is to kind of take their songs and turn them into something different live.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I think that they brought into the following years. Just keep that energy, just keep that build to it. Absolutely. And that's Powderfinger closes the main set, so we do get an encore, 2-song encore, which lasts, if this is Pearl Jam wise, this is like a 5-song encore time wise. But if this was a Pearl Jam show, you'd also get Rockin' in the Free World. Here's the connection that we have to this. Of course, they're going to do it at every single show. It's the one that they know best. However, they aren't performing it the same way that they're used to performing it. It's way more paced. It's more grooved. It's not what they usually did at shows then and at shows now. They just kind of make it the party song, the rock and roll song, and they just kind of go wild on it. But this really feel like it had a rhythm and a building momentum to it.
Yeah, and I mentioned that Saturday Night Live performance where I think it's Neil and Crazy Horse in 88 or 89 playing it, and it really had that kind of dirty, like dirgy feel to it, and it kind of has, it's kind of like a stomp, and this had that feel to it, definitely. I thought it was great. And Neil, like, I loved when Neil kind of broke it down near the end and it got really low, and he just kind of just chugging along on it. I thought it was fantastic.
Do you think that without Pearl Jam's influence on this song, do you think that it's not it doesn't become one of the bigger Neil songs in his catalog?
Ooh. Probably not. I mean, I gotta think they had a lot to do with it, but again, I don't know, Neil's fan base enough to know how they regard this song, and if it would have kind of gone up into that higher echelon without Pearl Jam kind of taking it and making it their own.
Right. I thought I had read that like once, around that VMAs time, I think Neil had dropped the song live. I think, after that SNL performance, I think he had dropped it for a couple years. And then Pearl Jam playing it kind of reignited his passion for it. So, after that, and now it's kind of, by dumb Americans everywhere, it's considered a patriotic song. So it's, you go out on 4th of July barbecues and you hear "Rockin' in the Free World" and "Born in the USA," and yep, that's a family that doesn't pay attention at all.
Oh yeah, some of the lyrics in this one would definitely give that away. I think you'd make it a couple of minutes in and be like, wait, what?
Yeah,
Turn
right.
this off.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't just listen to the chorus. Don't just listen to the catchy parts. But, I mean, just amazing to see them play this with Neil and, a different vibe than with Eddie, of course. But, I love how they were able to kind of do it both ways. And you have to think, too, this, bringing back up the Polo Field show, they played this twice. They did like a reprise of this at the Polo Field show, which was kind of frowned upon by a lot of people and is kind of laughed at when looked upon now.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing that you always laugh when if you go to see like the one-hit wonder band from the 90s at the state fair, everybody they come out and play their hit song, and then the joke is everyone comes out, play it again. So yeah, you don't want to be in that company. But yeah, they were out of songs. They had to do something.
It's funny because now that brings back a story of a friend who went and saw a flock of seagulls at a small club, and I said, okay, how many times did they play Iran? And was that their song?
That was their song. Yeah.
It was okay. I was getting them and Aha confused for a sec. So he said they played it twice. They played one version that was completely and totally electronic, and then they played it normally. So yeah, that pretty much, that's par for the course right there. That's exactly, nobody's going to that show and being like, man, Flock of Seagulls, let's get deep into their back catalog right here, right?
Yeah.
No,
I don't know. I wanted to mention too. I don't know if you had seen this, but the movie Almost Famous, Cameron Crowe movie. Cameron Crowe, of course, has a history with Pearl Jam. It's recently come out. They've kind of had the anniversary of the movie. It's kind of come out that Neil Young was supposed to have a role in that movie. He was going to play the guitar player's dad. He was supposed to kind of come out and he was going to have this kind of young wife, and he was going to come out and be like, hey, here's there's not much to it, but yeah, they said it came down to it. They had the wardrobe picked out and everything, but I think it either got cut at the last minute or he couldn't make it to the last minute. But I think Cameron Crowe, he already had a relationship with Pearl Jam even throughout the 90s. So I got to think that was maybe him throwing in something. Hey, I'm gonna have Neil Young be kind of like the older mentor guy to this band from the 70s. That would have been really cool to see.
Well, Cameron Crowe, I think, at all like the big cover pieces that were written about Neil in the 70s, I think were all written by Cameron Crowe, if I'm not mistaken. Because there was I got really into this. So the Memphis Pearl Jam show in 2014, on the airplane in the airport, I bought an issue of Rolling Stone that was like basically the Neil Young platinum issue or whatever they call it. So it's all like the best stories and cover stories of Neil Young's throughout the years, and then they do a top 100 songs, and they
did one for Pearl Jam too, and I should have bought it when I had the chance.
Yeah, I have that somewhere too. Yeah. It's not as, I'll be honest with you, it's not as well done as Neil's. But just reading some of the stories, they're just, It's good stuff. If you can get your hands on it, yeah, it's well worth the read. And I think most of those cover stories were Cameron Crowe stories. So yeah, great connection there. And who knows what could have been? You know, having Neil in Almost Famous would have been really, really cool. Yeah, but he doesn't strike me as that type.
Yeah, and maybe that's why it would have worked. You know, it kind of would have been the kind of anti-Neil. You know,
right.
We'll never know.
Right. Yeah, we won't. So, but what we do know is they close this show with Like a Hurricane, and it's a great way to end. And again, like, you're getting all the epic songs. And this is sort of, when listening to this, I was sort of thinking to myself, like, hey, this is kind of, in a way, if you played this and Cortez the Killer back to back, they would kind of fit like sort of an epic saga together. And then I said, you know what, that sounds really stupid. I'm not going to mention that on air. So out of all things, I went to his Wikipedia page and I wanted to look at all the songs off of his album. So I didn't know what album Like a Hurricane was on. It's on American Stars and Bars. I had no idea. That's not an album that I listen to very often. I just know the song because it's a fantastic song. And in the liner notes of Wikipedia, it says this is Like a Hurricane is considered a continuation of the vibe that Cortez the Killer gave off. Huh. I was shocked that somebody else made that connection to it, and it made sense. I could have thought that was the dumbest thing that I ever said, and it apparently does make sense. So I don't know, try listening to them back to back. They have the longevity, the massive solos, the massive builds, and I think Like a Hurricane has more of a catchy rhythm to it, but yeah, I can see them kind of being packaged together.
Yeah, there's a part near the end where it breaks down to just Neil again, and he's playing something in it. It almost sounded like a snippet of a Mirrorball song. I'm not sure if that's on purpose or if it's part of the song and it's just a similar melody, but it was a nice way to tie the whole thing into. And I couldn't place it. It was just a little riff that he did a couple of times when he's playing solo and he's singing near the end. But it sounded a lot like one of the Mirrorball songs, like a melody. I'd have to go back and listen to it again. Maybe we can play it and people can, if they can hear it. But yeah, it was a nice way to tie the whole thing in. I thought it was a great way to end the show.
Yeah, and what they do here, I mean, this is fantastic. They, I'm looking at the song and I'm saying, oh, it sounds like it's over. This is 5-6 minutes in, but there's 5-10 minutes of song left, and that part of the song, they get like this kind of build, and Jack does a tremendous job with this, where he's building and you keep waiting for that final beat. Like, when's it going to finish? When are we going to get that final, euphoric, rock and roll show, ending here? And it doesn't come. It just holds. And it holds for about like a minute or two before they finally build back into another version of the chorus. And then they kind of jam a little bit, and they do it again, and I'm fucking fooled again. I can't believe I got fucking fooled again. I learned nothing from The Who, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the sign of a great song, is like it's not predictable. They can throw those twists in, and yeah, like you feel like you're along for the ride.
Yeah, and you know what? They don't even end the song on that dramatic rock and roll beat. It just kind of fades out, and you hear the last person you hear is actually Brendan O'Brien. You kind of hear the keyboard fade out a little bit, and that's how the show ends. And it's such an eerie, cryptic way of ending, and sort of anticlimactic rock and roll way of ending a show, that I didn't even realize that Neil would do something like that. But you know what? Kind of makes sense now. Just sort of the mystique of his career. Yeah, it's kind of like an ellipses, a to be continued, for next time.
And yeah, that was kind of the attitude too, like kind of the anti-rock star vibe that he put off. Like he's always kind of flipped the middle finger to whoever is in charge at that time. You go back to like This Note's for You and stuff like that, and even
Right.
Some of the stuff in the '60s with Buffalo Springfield and CSNY. Like he was always kind of on the outskirts of the mainstream. So yeah, I can't see him doing like a big rock and roll style ending. Like and again, it was the '90s. That was what was cool. Like it wasn't cool to be a big rock star. So yeah, I mean that totally fits.
All right, so we made it to the end of the set. So we said potential for us to pick 3 songs here. Why don't we just do it? Because I think it's going to be hard to pick from, but there's a lot of good stuff to just reminisce on from what we've been talking about for the last hour.
All right, well, I'll go Mr. Soul. Again, it was great to hear the way they worked it out. Again, like I talked about the subject matter, totally relevant, totally appropriate to the time. I thought it was a nice thing for them to mix into the kind of the early Mirrorball section. I'll say Big Green Country to open it up. Great way to start it off, and no surprise they opened up every single show with it. And to pick a third one, it's really tough. Like I love the Mirrorball songs. I got to go Throw Your Hatred Down, number 1. To coming off that Neil solo section in the middle, to have them come out and just blow the roof off with Throw Your Hatred Down was absolutely wonderful. So those are my 3.
Yeah, Throw Your Hatred Down. I'm sort of in the middle of deciding whether I want that to be my number 1 or my number 2. But since you made it your number 1, that might kind of sway me in the other direction here. So my number 3 is actually going to be Needle in the Damage Done, just because you just get the crowd reaction off of that, and they're singing along to it, and it's not a song that really deserves this. I mean, it does deserve it, but it's not a song that constitutes it. It's depressing. It's the subject matter is not really fit for an arena rock setting. So just to hear that and to hear the enthusiasm off of that, it just kind of took me for a loop and surprised me. I'm going to make number 2 Throw Your Hatred Down. I think that this was the best of the Mirrorball songs from the night. It just had so much energy to it, especially the band. They were off stage for 4 songs, and it was kind of like their encore break. They were able to get back there and with Neil, and it felt like for the rest of the show they were just after Scenery, they were a lot more comfortable in their own skin and playing with Neil, and I really felt it with that version too. And number 1, I'm going to have to say Cortez, because it's just the storytelling and the builds in it, like it just takes you in so many different directions, and like it's one of Neil's best songs. It's one of his most epic songs, and it just goes to show that he can do it with Crazy Horse, he can do it with Pearl Jam, he can do it with anybody that basically sets up as his backing band. So that Pearl Jam was able to go in and be that, I think, is absolutely impressive on their parts. And not to say that I didn't think that they could, but I'm still blown away by them being able to get out of their comfort zone and do that. So yeah, Cortez the Killer, number 1 for me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Why don't we rate it?
I don't know if I can, man. You can't you can't rate it on the scale of like a Pearl Jam show, because it's not one. But I don't have enough context of like Neil shows to compare it to. I mean, I
don't either.
Yeah, I might have to give this one a pass.
I don't either, but I'm rating it off of history, and I'm rating it off of kind of just what it means in the band's legacy, and I think it's a 10 for that. I think it's we mentioned a couple times in the show that it just gets kind of forgotten about because there's no Eddie involved, and it's Neil taking over the show. And, going back to the Polo Field show, that wasn't really something that the Pearl Jam fan was craving at the time. So it gets forgotten about, but it really, to see 2 Hall of Fame acts on the same stage together, combining their musical forces for, like this powerful moments. Yeah, like this is the All-Star game. This is the dream team. I love this. I think this absolutely deserves a 10 rating, whether you're considering it part of Pearl Jam's catalog, or if we were a Neil Jam podcast and just did Neil shows. I would probably, and granted, I have also not listened to as many Neil shows, but I would probably give this a 10 based off of just the history of it and knowing, how Pearl Jam's career ended up. This is that special to me.
Oh, okay. Hey, I'll put it out there to the listeners and the patrons. If they listen to that bootleg, or if you guys want to go back and watch the YouTube video, if you want to send in your ratings, somebody wants to send in a rating for me to substitute this week, I'll take that. So I don't feel good about putting it out there one way or the other, because I don't think I would have given it a 10. But maybe that's just me. So I'm not going to do it the disservice of giving it a ranking when I don't know the whole story. But again, Mirrorball is absolutely due for a resurgence. They just announced that super deluxe version of Wildflowers, the Tom Petty record from the mid 90s. So where is that deluxe Mirrorball, man? I want to hear everything from those sessions. Give me all the songs, all the outtakes, give me everything. Let's make that happen.
And they should put a Merkin Ball in there too.
Oh yeah.
That for me. That's the icing on the cake. I'm buying it if it's coming with Merkin Ball.
Yeah, let's put a couple of these live shows in there too. Make it a whole thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, did you have anything on the extra songs? I didn't really write any notes for it.
It was great to hear On the Ocean. That is my favorite song on that record. So I loved listening to Jack play on it. But again, it was pretty standard versions. Those are from really early in the tour, so I think they were kind of still feeling their way around it. But yeah, I mean, again, I'm the Ocean, fantastic song. I love all 6-7 minutes of it. So that was great listening to Jack play again. Jack's a great drummer. He fits perfectly with what they were doing. So, yeah, I really enjoyed listening to that. And you get Peace and Love without Ed, which maybe some people might think is missing something. So, yeah, it was cool that they bookended it, give you a couple extra songs from the record that they played. But yeah, there wasn't much to it.
And I mentioned before there were a couple other songs that Neil played in his solo set, but there weren't a lot of different songs that they mixed in to the regular sets. I think there was one show, I think it was in Prague, that they closed the show with Down by the River, which is really cool, and I wish we had our hands on that. If that's out there, somebody let us know, because that's got to be incredible. But they only did it once the span of that whole entire tour. So if anybody has it, let us know. We want it. Want to hear it. Would have loved for them to play Cowgirl in the Sand too. I think that would have been very interesting. That's another top 5 Neil song for me. So yeah, it's just such a cool aspect of both Pearl Jam and Neil Young's history here, just to have it there. All right, so let's kind of reiterate some of the things that we were talking about before. If you want to go to Patreon and subscribe and get to listen to our set list draft and get to be a part of a set list draft, get to listen to our Bridge School show that we're putting out this week on 2001. It's all going to be there. Next week we might have a Rearview Mirror Evolution episode. Might be. Put a little asterisk on that. We're going to start working on it. We shall see. No promises, but we're working on it. That should be in the next coming weeks. So head on over to patreon.com/liveon4legs if you want to be a part of that. Also tomorrow, remember, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, the 27th, Last Fan Standing over Zoom. We will send out the Zoom invites through DMs on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, wherever, or email, liveon4legspodcast@gmail.com. Get in touch with us however you can, and we will send you a link to get into the trivia contest, and it should be fun. It's just kind of hanging out with, 20 or so Pearl Jam fans for a whole entire night. So, but John, next week is an anniversary week for us. It's kind of our 2-year birthday anniversary since we started the show. I think our first show was released on September 7th, our first episode, but really September 4th is kind of where Live on Four Legs really started, because that was the second Fenway show. And that's coming sometime next week, which means it's the end of the summer, which is just absolutely ridiculous. Time absolutely flies. And we have something for next week, but you know what? I think we're going to save it.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think we have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the thing. On Wednesday, or maybe Tuesday, either day, keep your eyes peeled. Wait for your Apple notification to pop up and see what pops up. That's all we'll say.
Yeah, this would be a great time to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're not going to say anything on social media. We won't even tease it. We won't even hint at what's coming. But let's just say something's there. So if you want something, we got some if you need it. Hey.
Yeah,
all right.
Just keep an eye out on your podcast feed and our social media on Tuesday and Wednesday, and hopefully people will be into it.
Yep. I sure think they will. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think that people would have liked it. So it's going to be good. Trust me. You have my word on this. You will enjoy. But for now, no more teasing. Just saying goodbye. So this may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, I miss you already, and I miss you always. And thanks to everybody that joined the forum, by the way. Some of the people, David Ritter and Gabe Speece and Joey Goodsir, Patrick Bagel, of course. Then a couple of people were just listening in for a little while, like Aurelian and Brian Anderson and Randy... Randy Morgan. Yeah. I called him Other Randy because that's just fair for this purpose. Sorry, Randy, but that's just the way it is. And I can't remember if I'm forgetting anybody. Danny King was there for a little bit.
Yeah, Danny was in there for a minute. Yeah, that was great to see all the names. Yeah, thanks everybody for doing that.
Yep. So thanks for being involved with that, and for Neil Jam and. Guess what? We went around the world again. We didn't even say it, but we did another Around the World episode. Hit up Ireland. You got to check out what we got going on in September, because we're going to hit up a lot of places. We're going to finish up Europe finally, and then we're going to get to South America. But first, there's next week, and no teasing for next week. So we'll see you then.
Bye, everybody.